Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today I want to go over about 10 vegetables that are a must for any gardener to grow. These are standards in my garden, and I think these are great for new gardeners. It can be overwhelming trying to figure out what you want to grow. So I'm going to show you growth examples, talk a little bit about temperatures they like and why that I like them. Let's just start right here with collard greens. Collards are really easy to grow. Beautiful leafy green. 1 or 2 plants is all you need for 2 people, maybe 2 or 3 for a family of 4. They love the cool weather. They can get planted early in the spring. I'm here in Maryland Zone 7. They grow well into the summer. In some places they'll flower. You can eat the buds and flowers actually if they flower in the summer. You can plant them again in the fall. In some places they'll just grow through the whole season. So they're truly a 3-season crop: spring, summer, and fall. And in some places, if you have mild winters, they will grow through the winters. So collards, just absolutely delicious, beautiful plant. That is one plant that I planted about 60 days ago or so. Swiss chard. A lot of people don't grow this. It's very similar to the collards. It's a great plant to plant in the spring, and this will actually grow through spring, summer, and fall. It doesn't flower the first year. You just get these beautiful leaves that really have a spinach-like taste. You can cut up the stems, perfect in stir fries. So we've got chard and collards. And then right over here next to it, and you can see this is a small space. I got other things growing like potatoes and such. This is kale. Kale is a wonderful leafy green, loves the cool temperatures of the spring, and this will definitely grow here in Maryland spring, summer, and fall. It will overwinter. The following year I let this flower, produce blooms, flowers, etc. I eat those. They're delicious. For 2 people, probably 2 plants is plenty. If you really like kale, maybe 3 plants. If you have a family of 4, 3 or 4 plants. You don't want to overplant these because they just grow so large, and if you're not eating them quick enough, they're going to get problems like whiteflies and such. But if you plant the right amount, you're harvesting regularly, you really keep the insects under control. I love growing tomatoes. A couple of tips: if you're just getting started, this is an 8-foot bed, so space your plants out something like this if it's your first time really growing. These are cherry tomatoes, 1, 2, 3. More space in between, that lets better air circulation through, helps manage diseases a little bit better. As you get more experience, you can put 4 plants in an 8-foot space. These are beefsteak types, large tomatoes right here. These are cherry types that I'm going to let grow up this cattle panel, and I'm going to have a cherry tomato tunnel. So I have 7 plants in this 8-foot bed, and that's perfect. You definitely want to stake your tomato plants. These are T-posts. They're kind of expensive compared to wood. However, these are going to last, a lifetime. So it's worth paying up, I think, for these metal posts. These are 8 feet tall. Your indeterminate tomatoes are going to get really tall, so you want to be tying them to something. In this case, I'm using the cattle panel. Spinning around this way, this is a 4-foot by 4-foot bed, and I have 1 tomato in each corner, posts, same basic setup. This is a great way to grow tomatoes. You can focus your resources right in the bed, you can tend to the tomatoes, stake them upwards, and it's enough space to let that air circulation through. So I highly recommend combination of tomatoes, the slicing type, maybe some even big 2-pound tomatoes, and the cherry types. I also recommend growing peppers. They are really easy to grow here in Maryland. They don't get many diseases and don't really have a lot of pest problems. The vegetables are going to vary zone to zone, garden to garden. Sometimes a unique pest to your area or disease can damage certain crops, so you kind of sometimes plant a garden based on what your garden brings in a way of diseases and insects. Peppers do really well in Maryland, and everything seems to leave them alone. This is a 4-foot by 4-foot space, 12 peppers in this space. You can plant them a lot more closely together than you think. If you're just getting started, I might just do a row of peppers, better air circulation, a little bit easier to manage. But with some practice, you can grow 12 in a small space like this. I've even grown up to 15 in the same space. Peppers do really well. These are shishitos. You can grow super hots, mildly hot like a jalapeno, or sweet peppers. Let me show you another design for a pepper bed. We'll come back, we'll talk about lettuce, radishes, etc. This is a setup of a mix of gypsy peppers, which are small, sweet, bell-like peppers, bell peppers, and Anaheim chilies, which are hot. 8 pepper plants. Actually, that's 10 pepper plants in this small space. This is a great way to manage them. When you have thinner rows, it just helps with the air circulation a little bit better versus the square that I had them in there. Here's another way to grow your pepper plants. This is only about 12 inches between each plant. You really don't have to put 18 inches between plants. You'll see that often. In some cases, I even put 2 plants in a single planting hole, but it's 1 plant every 12 inches, and this is a perfect row for beginners. It's going to be real easy to manage, and it's going to be really productive. You know, in this 8-foot strip, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plants. I don't want to get too close to that sunflower plant, but I'll have 7 pepper plants in this little strip. Again, it's going to be very, very productive. Peppers and tomatoes are warm season crops. You want to get them into the soil when the temperatures, top 2, 4, 6 inches of the soils, you know, getting into the 60s. It's really that transition from the colder spring into the warmer later spring, you know, early summer. I'm in transition, so I have a lot of cool weather crops growing. Lettuce loves the cool weather. If you plant lettuce in the summer, it's just going to flower and bolt. So you want to plant it early on in the spring here in Maryland. We can plant this again in the fall. But look at the beautiful heads of romaine that are forming. So I highly recommend lettuce. I'm growing these for full-size heads. They're probably 6 to 8 inches apart, 1 plant per space, and in a couple of days these are going to be ready to harvest. But they're just forming, you know, beautiful heads of romaine. They come in different colors. You can grow loose leaf lettuce, all kinds of different lettuce. Let me just show you what's down here too. That's a red romaine, and they're doing really, really well as we're transitioning into the warmer season. But we're getting now, again, upper 40-degree temperatures, 50-degree nights. The cool temperatures are really helping the lettuces. In the same theme of lettuces, this is a smaller heading romaine. We have endive. Most people don't grow endive. It's beautiful. It's nice, thicker, curly leaves, a little bit of bitterness, very slight, holds dressing really well. Some of these I've cut down already, leave the roots in, and they've come back. Like this one is its second growth. Endive is a great leafy green, very hardy, not a lot bothers it, and when the warm soil comes, that means as the temperatures go up during the day into the 70s, the nights are in the 60s, sometimes 80s, the soil's going to warm up and your lettuce is going to bolt. Endive lasts a little bit longer, can take the heat better, and you're going to have your leafy greens as your lettuces and your spinach are going away because it's just too warm for them. But I highly recommend growing endive. There's actually 3, 6, 9, 12 plants in here, very close together. If you want more space, these are going to get 8 to 10 inches wide. You could plant them 8, 10 inches apart, a little bit better again for airflow. If you had snails and slugs that come and devastate your garden, putting these closely together, yes, we'll bring in more snails and slugs. Spacing them out, the snails and slugs are still going to find them. What you would have to do in this case is use a slug bait with iron phosphate or sulfur. You sprinkle the baits down, kills the snail and slugs. If you have them in your garden, they're going to really devastate your lettuces, your leafy greens. So you do have to manage them. You can't really plant differently with more spacing. The snails and slugs find them, they eat them, they damage them. Why did I say snails and slugs so many times? Because if I didn't treat them, they're the #1 pest in my garden. They would just wipe out all my crops. So as a new gardener, you're going to learn about diseases and problems as they show up. You just don't know about them yet. So take notes about, you know, the time that they show up in your garden, and then you're going to use those notes to come up with a plan. Here's another place that I'm growing some of the endive, and that's 4 plants. You can see how big they get. You know, I said maybe 10 or 12 inches. That's a good 14 inches across. That's 1 plant right there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Harvested the one out of there. And with the warm weather approaching, you can see how the spinach has bolted. And of course you could add that into, you know, 10 must-grow plants. I'm not going to add that one in. I have some other ones that I have in mind. I absolutely love peas. I highly recommend them. You plant these in the spring, early spring. They're beautiful. They are just starting to form. They're going to be ready soon. You probably have 40 pea plants in here, spaced about 2 inches apart. Big rectangle of them, using bamboo stakes to support them. They have hollow stems. highly recommend growing peas. These have to be grown, start them early in the spring. They don't do well in the hot summer. You can plant them again in the fall. I have some peas over here that are a little bit easier to see. This is just a fire ring that I've repurposed as a raised bed. Peas, absolutely beautiful. Just planted on the outside. I'm using ladder mesh and a tomato cage to trellis them. They're going to be absolutely delicious in about 2 weeks. You can actually also eat the stems, by the way. They're delicious in salads. But in about 2 weeks, I'm going to have my first peas. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Peas are a must grow. Coming over here is garlic. I highly recommend that. It's not really that difficult to grow. This is hardneck garlic. Most garlic you plant in the fall, late fall, even early winter in some places. They need a cold period, and then come spring they take off. This is getting ready to finish up. That's why it's starting to brown out. But this is my hardneck garlic, you know, planted maybe, I don't know what that is, 2 inches apart, 3 inches apart, 4 inches space between the rows. I tend to plant things more closely together. My harvests are fine. If you are just starting out with gardening, sometimes it's better, again, like I've been saying, to space the plants out. Just gives you a better opportunity to manage pests and problems. As you get more dense, these problems can show up. But garlic really doesn't have any enemies here in Maryland. It can get wireworms and stuff like that. But generally speaking, I plant my garlic just like this. Every year I get more than I really need, and I give it away to people. But I really do recommend growing garlic. There's hardneck garlic, there's softneck garlic. If you want to subscribe and follow me, I will show you how I harvest and take care of everything this year that you see in the garden. But you can also search my 1,500 videos and find specific videos on how to plant garlic or how to plant peas. So there's a lot of information there. All right, what's next? I'm in a process of mulching this area that's outside my fence line. I highly recommend purple top turnips. You can eat the greens, number one, but you're going to get beautiful turnips. These aren't quite forming yet, but they're going to be forming over the next week. Purple top turnips are great to grow in the spring. You can grow them again in the fall. They actually do okay here in the summer. The high heat of July and early August can, you know, inhibit how they grow. But I love growing the purple top turnips. It's a very easy to grow root crop. Some holes in there from snails, and they're perfect. There's a snail right there. So even though that I'm treating them, you know, they're still around, but the devastation would be crazy if I wasn't using the slug baits as I was talking about earlier. It makes a difference. Even with the slug baits, you're still going to get some damage, but the idea is you don't worry about the damage if you're still getting a harvest. You want to manage the problems down, you want to manage the diseases down, the pest damage down. Purple top turnips are a great addition to a garden, really easy to grow. I picked these 10+ vegetables based on several things. Number one, of course, don't grow what you don't like. So I've picked the things that I enjoy eating, that I like to grow. I also picked things that really have fewer disease problems, pest problems, and that's going to vary garden to garden. They grow quickly, they produce well, so these are the top 10+ based on those things. You know, they don't really get a lot of problems, they grow pretty quickly, you get a good harvest. I like to eat them, hopefully you like to eat them. So that's what I'm basing it on. Yes, you could grow spinach, that's one that you could add in there, but it bolts really quickly here in Maryland. You could also grow carrots, which I love, but they can take a long time to germinate, take a long time to develop. So I'm really looking at the speed of growth, the amount of harvest you get, and then the problems that they have. So to help out other gardeners, we're all in different zones. Maybe throw out a couple vegetables that you find grow really well in your zone. Let people know where you're at. I think that will help them out. Part of being a new gardener is figuring out what you want to grow. Again, what you like to eat, but also what grows well in your zone. And you're not going to know that right away. So it's going to take some time to figure it out. So don't get discouraged. You know, plant different things. Don't overplant. Don't plant too much of one thing. Don't try and grow 40, 50 different varieties of things. Just start with the basics and you're going to have a lot of fun. There's a learning curve. You're going to learn as you go. And certainly, please, just leave questions and comments when you watch my videos and I'll try and help you out. Potatoes are one crop that I think every gardener should grow. They're a lot easier than you think. Now, these are all potatoes right there, along the back. got some lettuce in front of there. You can see the romaine a little bit. Growing in the ground, plenty of videos. Again, like I said, if you want to subscribe, I'll show you how I plant these in numerous videos. If you don't want to grow them in the ground or you don't have the space, potatoes grow really well in containers. These are all container potatoes. This is a 20-gallon container. I sell 20-gallon fabric pots at my seed and garden shop if you want to check that out at the Rusted Garden. There are some damage to the leaves. Again, it's the snail and slugs, but also the Colorado potato beetle starts rolling in soon. And as I was saying, as a new gardener, you're not necessarily going to know what problems show up in your garden, but when you notice insects and diseases, write them down and you can learn how to take care of them. And the goal again is manage the problems down. 20-gallon bag, there's probably 6 potatoes in there. You can plant potatoes more often than you think. A lot of times we plant the potatoes here in Maryland sometime in March, early spring in general. They go through the growing process. Eventually these are going to yellow out, you know, fall down, die back. We harvest the potatoes. But I plant potatoes in March. I plant some again in June. I plant some in the beginning of August. They are really a crop that you can continue to plant throughout the season. The yield or the harvest may not be, you know, supersized potatoes when you're putting them in the ground in August, harvesting in the later fall, but you still get plenty of potatoes. This is a 50-gallon grow bag or a 100-gallon grow bag. Lots of potatoes in there. I do this every year. I'll have more potatoes than I need. I'll have plenty to give away to people. Potatoes just aren't as hard to grow as we think. I'm just taking a quick look. I don't see a Colorado potato beetle, but I know that they're going to be showing up soon. But just look at how many potatoes I have growing. And the cool thing about potatoes is the leaves can be damaged by like 30%, 40%, chewed back, eaten by deer, and you're still going to get a beautiful harvest. They can really take a beating, but in the ground, you're going to get beautiful potatoes. Another crop I highly recommend are radishes. Now it's getting warm here. Again, we're in that transition from cool to warm crops. They're starting to bolt, which means they send up their flower stalks. Flavor of the radish changes. It gets spicy. Sometimes the bulb itself gets fibrous. These are great crops to grow early spring, late spring, but once it starts to warm up, you have to stop growing them. But again, we can plant these in the fall. A lot of people forget, in many places we have 2 cool seasons, spring, late fall, early winter. But I highly recommend growing radishes, and the trick to radishes is to plant them in succession, meaning maybe you put down 25 plants, just say March 15th. What's next? April. In April, you put down another 25 seeds. In May, you put down another 25 seeds. You're spacing them out so that you're not getting 100, 150 radishes all at once. You can plant them, you know, every 2 to 4 weeks, get a continual harvest of the radishes over a longer period of time rather than just getting that 200 at once. That can be hard to eat otherwise. These are beets. These are the next root crop that I highly recommend. I love turnips, radishes, and beets. Beets you can plant early on. These were planted on March 13th if you have good eyes. Today is May 20th. They really grow slowly. Then as it warms up, they take off. They can grow through the summer. I have had plenty of beets that have grown through the summer, harvested later in August. They're going to start maturing really in June, July, August, but they can take the heat. The leaves are going to get beat up like heck. They can even die back. The beet itself is going to stay tender. They're really a crop here in Maryland that you can plant early in spring, plant again now. Like if I want to put in another round, I could do that. I had a rabbit come in and chew out some of the beets that were right there. Plant them again in succession. A little bit similar to the radishes. I can plant these again later in August to have a fall crop. Beets are just really hardy. They're delicious. They're good for you. You can eat the leaves and they can take a lot of damage. And looking around real quick, those are turnips back there. Coming over here, that's celery. That's a little bit harder to grow. Lots of romaine. You can see some of my endive again. And please subscribe. I set my garden up as a teaching garden, so I have all these different pockets to give you examples of different ways you can grow, you know, fruits and vegetables in your garden. Some people prefer, you know, raised beds. Some people have small spaces. So I set my gardens up so you can kind of pick and choose for my videos what you might want to use in your gardens. Zucchini. I absolutely love zucchini. You can pick it when it's about this size. You can let it get bigger. It will keep growing. It becomes huge. You don't want to get it too large, but small zucchini, perfect for salads and stir fries. As it gets bigger, you can make zucchini parmesan. I have 2 plants in here. This is a 4-foot by 4-foot raised bed. They're going to hang over this way. I really recommend, especially for new gardeners, is just start with 2 plants. They tend to get different problems, sometimes powdery mildew, they get vine borers, they get squash bugs. 2 plants, you can turn the leaves over, you can look for eggs, you can examine the stems. If you put in more plants, if you're getting to 4, 5, 6, it's real hard to manage them. The trick to this is let them start growing. You know, you can see how beautiful they are as of May 20th. They're starting to flower. They're going to get large, they're going to produce, they're probably going to get beat up and die off in June. Instead of getting discouraged, pull out the plants that are damaged, put in new seeds. You can keep putting in seeds of zucchini through the summer here in Maryland. So I can plant these again in June, I can plant them again in July, I can even plant them in August. They're going to mature from germination to producing in about 45 days. So don't feel like you have to do all of your squash at once or your zucchini at once. Plant them again in succession throughout the summer. And remember, your plants are going to get beat up, they're going to get damaged. When they are beat up, damaged, get rid of them, plant again. In that same breath, another must-have, I love tomatoes, I love cucumbers, are cucumbers. So I have my cucumbers starting. These are planted as a seed on April 10th, so today is May 20th. They look beautiful. They're going to be trellising up this cattle panel. I think I have 2 plants in there. I usually put in 2 cucumber plants per space. And sometimes, well, in some cases, and last year I put 2 plants right here and I put 2 plants over there. So I can have 4 growing up this cattle panel here. This year I planted a grape, which is one of my goals this year. I want to bring in more fruit to the inside of my garden, inside the fence line. But cucumbers are really easy to grow. Over on the other side of the cattle panel, I have the national pickling. These are just a little bit smaller. These are going to get beat up by cucumber beetles, spider mites, other problems are going to come in. Again, I can drop seeds for my cucumber plants again in June and even in July and plant through the cycle of these pests and diseases. So don't get discouraged if your plants die off. Sometimes we feel like we got to plant everything in May, in June, and then when they die we stop growing. Just keep growing. The warm season here in Maryland in many places is pretty long, and these warm weather crops mature extremely quickly. Beans are another great crop for new gardeners, and they're a staple in my garden. They grow really well, they're warm weather crops. The beans right here actually self-seeded from last year, and when the temperatures got to the right temperature, they all popped. I'm growing them up a trellis. I just used some paracord, some jute, 2 posts. These are going to get about 6 feet tall. They're pole beans. So I'm going to trellis them up, and then I'm going to trellis them back down. You don't need 6 feet, a 6-foot tall trellis. You can just kind of move the vines up and down. But I left 3 in here, 1, 2, 3. Beans are really easy to grow. You can plant them in May, you can plant them in June, you can plant them in July, you can even plant them in August. A lot of the warm season crops mature quickly, like I've been saying, so you can plant them multiple times throughout the year. And the cool season crops, the ones that you plant in spring, and then they don't really like the warm weather of summer, you can plant again in August. They roll into that fall cool temperature and you get another round of cool season crops. But I highly recommend growing beans, either the bush type, which will get about this tall. You plant them in rows, usually 2 rows next to each other. They get to a set height, you harvest them that way. Or pole beans. If you grow pole beans, you're going to need some sort of trellising. Thanks so much for watching. Now there are so many fruits and vegetables that you can plant. I just wanted to highlight about 10 that I think are a must for every garden. These are great vegetables to get you started. They will keep you busy. Gardening is a learning curve. If you're just getting started, you're going to make mistakes, but you're still going to get great production out of your garden. Take notes, figure out the problems, learn, have some fun with it. But again, there are many more vegetables that you can grow. Get started with these. And again, thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com, and please subscribe. I'll show you how I grow and take care of this entire garden for 2024. Cheers.